Hello, screenwriters, and welcome to Writing for Screens. Today's live episode, Ask Me Almost Anything. My name is Glenn Gers, and I am the Chief Operating Everything here at Writing for Screens, which is a channel in which I have tried to take the skills and tools and insights that I had to figure out for myself in a 25-year career writing for TV and movies. On my way out of this business, I am trying to leave behind, for those of you who are coming in, all the things that I thought I had to figure out for myself. I actually did figure them out for myself. And I'm going to give them to you so that you can try, I'm a little out of it, so that you can try and figure out whether they help you. There are no rules. There is no one way to do it. There is no right or wrong way to be a writer, to write scripts, to write anything. There is no rule or right way to do it. So all you can do is try out different things that you figure out work for you. Take the ones that work for you. Get rid of the ones that don't. All that matters is that you make your own path to your own work. That will be different for everyone. Everyone wants to do different things. Everyone has different gifts and visions. Everyone is in different situations. There is no way to say, this is the way to do it. So all I've done is I've said, when I was working on characters, this is what I discovered helped me. Maybe it'll help you. Maybe it won't. If it doesn't, it will tell you, well, maybe I should do the opposite to that. Whatever it is, that's what we got here. I put them all on my channel. Here's a screen grab of the main page of the channel. If you look down towards the bottom, you will see a bunch of playlists. Here's a close-up of the top first 3 playlists: Screenwriting Essentials, Screenwriting Tools, Skills, and Craft, and The Process, Being a Writer. These 3 playlists have about 50 total small lessons. Each one's about 10 minutes of video, about 10 minutes on a very specific topic: genre, flashbacks, character, dialogue, whatever it is. I tried to break that down into useful skills and tools, things to do, things to try. So that's what these are. This is the essence of my work, and I have put it there for you free 24/7. Please check it out. Anything you're going to ask me, the answer is probably in these videos. However, having done these videos, I then decided to try live streaming, which I now do every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time Zone. I do this different topics every time. This week it is simply a free-for-all. Anyone can ask me what they want. I am happy to answer, to discuss, to debate, whatever you like. That is what I'm doing because I am in the midst of finalizing the book version of these lessons. I took the lesson videos and I've made them into a book, which I am self-publishing. So I was just proofreading this morning the text. There's a couple of little formatting issues I have to work, and then hopefully I'm going to be able to get it up there on Amazon, where you can order either an ebook or a paperback book. That is what I've been doing lately, so I haven't had time to prepare any live streams, and I'm working towards more of a free-form live stream thing. So that's what we're doing. All right, well, I'm going to start saying some hellos. Hello, Fung. Hello, Doreen. Hey, A-Link. And your waving hand. Hello, Sanchez Pablo. Are you excited? David Zucker announced a spoof version of Mission Impossible. He is returning to direct. The guy who made Airplane, I can't believe he is still alive. Yeah, that was my actual first thought. And I feel badly about this because I just saw the Naked Gun reboot with Liam Neeson. And I thought it was very, very funny. I am a little leery, frankly, of David Zucker doing new work because honestly, comedy is one of those things that very often as you get older, you get slower, you get a little more out of touch. I don't know. Like I said, Akiva Schaffer's Naked Gun reboot was hysterical. The original Naked Gun was very funny. So therefore, yeah, anything is possible. I am excited that he's getting to work on it. And I can't wait to see what happens. So yeah, that is something. But I do have to say, There are certain, there are certain skills that I'm not sure if they keep up as you age, and so what the hell? The Rolling Stones are like 250, so anything's possible. Hello, Lapadit. I usually sleep just an hour before your stream, so I am glad that you are. I'm sorry that you're awake. You have an English test tomorrow. Yes, absolutely. Wish me luck. What's going to be on the test? Maybe we can help you prepare. Hello, Lake Filter. Turning these live chats are one of my artist dates. That's great. I am so glad. I'm going to try to make these live streams more of a community event, and my creative work I'm going to be doing in a separate format. I Hate Jackie Chan says, how do you value Paul Thomas Anderson? All his movies are in my local cinema right now. Should I watch them? Yes. Paul Thomas Anderson is a remarkable talent. Not for everyone, not all the time. And also many of his movies are very different from one another. The Boogie Nights versus The Master, extraordinarily different. He is always trying to discover new things. He's pursuing his own vision. Sometimes that is hard to access. Other times it is freaking amazing. I think Paul Thomas Anderson is great, and I cannot wait for One Battle After Another, which is coming in a couple weeks, I believe, to theaters in VistaVision. Yeah, no, he's great. I like Boogie Nights a lot. I think it's not the deepest thing he's ever done, but he was young, and it is a remarkable work. I think that The Master is astonishing. I think There Will Be Blood. Okay, let's talk PTA movies, and which ones, if you only can see a couple, which ones would I most recommend? Magnolia, There Will Be Blood, Boogie Nights. Those would be, like, if you're only going to see a couple, those would be the ones I would suggest. On the other hand, The Master is extraordinary. And I'm blanking. Oh, Licorice Pizza is a lot of fun. It's going to be hard for a lot of people to access, but as a sort of story full of different vignettes that don't really make a story. They're more of like a capture of life. Remarkable work, great stuff. I think PTA is phenomenal, and I think that even the ones that I have a harder time with, like I get a little irritated by Inherent Vice, but on the other hand, there's scene after scene in that movie that are astonishing. So, what can I say? Paul Thomas Anderson, I highly recommend if you have not seen any. I especially Magnolia is amazing, really, really amazing. And There Will Be Blood is really amazing. And Roller Girl, Boogie Nights is just a blast, a dark blast. But if you know anything about the 80s, it's something to see. Michael, hello. Thomas, hello. The Naked Gun reboot was a David Zucker idea, and he said that Seth MacFarlane stole it without crediting him. I think actually he is credited, and I don't know what to say about that, but I'm pretty sure he's quite credited. I think I saw his name in the credits. I think he stole it in that he wouldn't let him do it. But anyway, on Paul Thomas Anderson, I love all his movies except The Master because I didn't understand a thing out of it. The Master is extremely indirect, and it's in a style of filmmaking in which you need to do a lot of work to put together what you think it is about. There's a lot of details which might be hard to follow in The Master, because The Master is sort of like in the theory that you're capturing the way people would talk, so they don't explain what they're doing because they know what they're doing. Most movies have an artificial level of exposition, which is a glorious thing. Good exposition is one of the greatest things you'll ever see. You see something like The Apartment. It is amazing how the exposition and the character are woven together. The thing about The Master he said, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to explain stuff. You're going to have to watch it. And essentially, you have to figure out for yourself. But more than figure out, you have to feel for yourself. He's not going to tell you what to feel. But I think my essential vibe on The Master is that it is a story about a badly, horrifically damaged person. A person, and that's the Joaquin Phoenix character, who was damaged before the war and then went through a war. And it is about his attempts to recover, and about the painful, difficult relationship between him and a mentor figure that he gets something from, but also has to outgrow. That's my personal vibe on it. Lake Filter says, I was in the middle of writing a fight scene in my already swollen last chapter of my novel, and I felt like it might be a bit draggy, so I inserted a few paragraphs of parallel scene. I don't know if adding is the solution to something that is draggy and swollen, to get medical about it. My first instinct is the thing to do with something where you feel it's a little overdone, that you may have gone too far, is to put it away for a while and then come back to it. If you put it away, and especially if you work on something else, if you disengage, then often you can look back at things. It's very hard to see your own work. Unfortunately for me, it takes years. So the problem is, very often when something is completely finished, when something is over, years, like I actually get it done, and then years later I'm like, oh, I didn't need to do that. Like some section of it or some vibe in it. So the thing that for me gives me the most perspective is doing something else, is letting it go, so that you can, when you come back to it, it's not everything. And once again, this is just my personal feel for something, but when I'm working on something, I get too into it, too attached to it, and every little goal and desire and nuance seems like it needs to be really pushed. And then later, when I come back to it, if I have done other things, worked on other projects, I look at it and I go, oh, as an audience, I get that. I don't need the 5 beats of this thing. I get the 1, or that something just doesn't, the proportions come back into view. That's my my basic take on things being overdone. I don't believe you can not do it. I believe you have to do overdoing. You have to take your instincts and your feelings and go with them, and then later you can decide how much of them need to be recrafted. Sometimes you need to rephrase things because you've said them in a way that sprawls, and you could later see a shorter way. But you can't do that at first, often. At first, you need to do everything, and then you need to get perspective on it. The other thing is ask yourself, what is the point of this fight, of this scene, of this whatever? And try and really think, well, because very often you just have too many things going on in a scene, too many desires, too many intentions. So the first thing I would suggest is to ask, like, okay, if I only had to get one thing, if I could only carry part of this, if I was in survival mode, what does this need to survive? Not to be the best, but just to survive. Because often best is that core, that surviving core, the most important thing. Burgundy speaks the truth. Of course you should go. Maybe these movies will inspire you. Absolutely right. For one thing, he is a masterful, we're talking about Paul Thomas Anderson. He is a masterful filmmaker. In other words, he just has that filmmaking talent. Every scene, there is a filmmaking energy. There is a gift of, he's pulling in a lot of different influences and exploring little things and trying a lot of things. In Magnolia, there are musical numbers. And they work brilliantly, I think. So yes, inspiration. At very least, you'll get inspiration, and actually, even at very least, less than that, you'll know what's going on when people are talking about him. So that's something. Many local cinemas are really full of Paul Thomas Anderson films. That's great. Yes, Burgundy is saying about Lake Filter and whether or not you want to add some intercut beats in a long scene. Parallels could raise up the tension or kill the rhythm. It depends on your pacing. That is exactly right. But once again, my instinct is, and this is sort of a key thing for you to think of, almost always when you ask a question, if you say like, I don't know what to do about this thing, in the question, you will have put the answer, because what you said in the question that you asked was, already swollen last chapter, and I felt like it might be a bit draggy. If you feel like it might be a bit draggy and it's already swollen, it probably is. So therefore, you've kind of answered your own question. And the solution to swelling, the solution to things being draggy, is not adding. It's almost never adding in that case. So that's my gut instinct, without obviously having read it, but just saying, almost always when people ask a question, the answer is in there. It's hidden. Hello, Wolf Powers. What part of your writing did you consider a weakness, and how did you solve it? That's a good question. I think let's talk about my weaknesses. I tend to be very, very ornate. I will just keep adding twists and layers. And the truth is, very often that is, while admirable and interesting, it's hard to take. Like, even as an audience, I look at my own work and I'm like, wow, I just put too much in. I gave it too much, that in fact, it could have been simpler. I only learned that late in my career, but I tend to always do that. I tend to just like, I have so many thoughts and ideas, and I work hard to get them all in. And sometimes I shouldn't get them all in. Sometimes I should have less. So I think that's a big weakness of mine personally. And then a lot of my problems with my writing had to do with career issues, not so much writing issues. Which was a big problem for me for writing, was simply I did not understand the job. I try and talk a lot about that because we tend to believe or want it to be true that the job of a professional writer, screenwriter especially, is to give them your art, to be the artist driving the project with his vision. And the truth is, that's not what is wanted of a screenwriter. A screenwriter is a craftsperson, hopefully a talented one, just like a costume designer is hopefully talented at costume design. But the screenwriter, while they are providing essential things, as is the costumer, their job is to work with the other people and to continue to adapt and create when the collaboration happens. And I tended to think of the collaboration as supporting and working from me and my work as the writer, as the inventor of all this. And the truth is, that's not how it works. Very often you get directors who they'll say, hey, I want to use this as something to riff from, and then I want to add other voices and do other things. And I didn't get that. I didn't realize how important it was to be a team player when you're a screenwriter. Talking about spoof master David Zucker, do you think spoofs have any structure? That's an interesting question. I do think they have a structure, partly because they're spoofing things with structure. But the thing is, like, spoof comedy is parody. It's taking a known thing and making fun of it specifically. Like a romantic comedy is saying, we're going to have these characters and situations be funny, but we're not making fun of another movie. But a spoof movie, a parody movie, is a movie that is literally making fun of another work. So one of the things you need to do is be able to work in the genre that you are making fun of. In other words, to legitimately create the story and characters that would work for that as a loose, simple framework for your gags. to use Naked Gun because I just saw it, there is a plot there. It is not a very elaborate plot. It is not a very smart plot. It barely makes sense, but there is a plot. There is a criminal, there is a cop, there is a crime that has to be solved, and that brings us to them to a confrontation. There are all the basic rules of standard Hollywood screenwriting are required of most parody films because they are parodying a thing with a structure. So if you're parodying a horror film or you're parodying a rom-com, whatever it is, if you are making fun of that thing, you need to make it clear. You may have to make that thing operable, that operational. In other words, in order to make fun of a rom-com, you need to have the rom-com in there and then have it be silly and unexpected and undercutting things, but it still has to function in its basics as a working rom-com in that it has the basic elements required. And then you take each one of them and you make fun of it. So yes, absolutely. David Zucker and likewise the many other the horror parodies and things like that. They are absolutely still required to have some structure, I think. So that's just me. That's just my thought about it. Let's see what else. I think since The Master, every Joaquin Phoenix character is a psychopath. No, because I don't know if you saw Come On, in which he's an inept and loving and progressive trying single father. Or actually, I think he's an uncle. I think he's taking care of his sister's kid, I believe. Anyway, the point is in Come On, he is not a psychopath. He's a difficult person, but he's not a psychopath. So I argue your point. Germany Football Rock says, I finished my screenplay, but it's only 79 pages, not a standard 110. Yet I feel the story is complete after revision a few times. That's a little short, but it sort of depends on your budget too. Because for instance, if you're doing a ultra low budget, if you're doing a no budget indie, an 80-page script is a blessing and people will love it. If you can get it up to 90, 95, then you're fine. A lot of solid scripts are 90, 95. Also, I don't know what your writing is like. You may be writing too densely on the page. In other words, are your paragraphs big, lots of words? If so, you might try breaking them up. Hold on, I'm just grabbing a screen grab of these questions so I can write down at the end what they were about. So my answer would be, check if you are, when you wrote 79 pages, do you have a lot of large paragraphs when you describe things? If so, break them up into smaller, shorter sections with double spaces between. It's going to give you 5 pages right there. Also see, is there something where maybe people need to talk a little bit more? Or is there maybe a scene or two that would enrich the story, add suspense or add emotion, add love for a love story, whatever it is, see. But here's the thing. Suppose you write something and it comes in at 80 pages and you absolutely think it's perfect as it is. Show it to people. When you show it to people, a lot of them will say, I felt that character was sort of thin. In other words, I would like more scenes and actions by that character. You may have rushed things without realizing it. Or it could be that's just fine. It is not impossible to get an 80-page script shot. Sometimes, like I said, people like it. Also, depending on what's happening in it, those pages do expand on the screen. Excuse me. Ultimately, there are a lot of reissues for some reason. UK was doing a reissue of all Christopher Nolan movies except Memento. Interesting. And the BFI is doing Ridley Scott reissues. Yeah, I think that there is a movement afoot to bring the screen experience back, and hopefully to bring the movie lovers back to theaters. For a while, the idea of seeing old movies on a screen was felt foolish. It's like, why not just watch it at home when you can stream it or whatever? So I would say that it's very likely that people are thinking, in order to get the people we've lost, that we may have lost some movie lovers who don't like new movies. And in fact, it used to be like when I was in high school, back in the 1970s, you very rarely could see old films. So there were specialized theaters that would run double features usually, and the pairing of the double features was often very creative. And they would do a double feature for 1 or 2 days and then turn it over for a new one. And so it was really exciting because that was how you could, before VHS and DVD, that was how you could see an old movie that otherwise was inaccessible. I think they're kind of bringing that back, and I think it's a good idea. Okay, Sealy Jack says, talk about pacing. How do you know the right moment to get out of a scene? That is an interesting question. Let's talk about that. My first answer would be, for me, the defining thing about a scene is that something is happening, that there is an action, a dramatic action. If you have not seen my video on the concept of dramatic action, I urge you to watch it. Hold on. And also, also, you might want to take a look at think in scenes. That's the other one where I talk about this, about the shape of scenes and the point. But those two videos sort of go together. I'll put links to them after this episode is not live. When I have a second to type, I will put links to those in the description. A scene for me is almost always, there's very rare exceptions, someone is doing something. Like if you look at any scene, and you should do this, by the way, you should take favorite movies or movies you think are interesting and watch them and break them down to scenes. Like hit pause when you change location or time. That is what I believe is the definition of a scene, is there's an action happening in a location at a time. Someone is going to be doing something in that scene. There sometimes are many people doing something in that scene, but there's usually one point. And honestly, let's suppose you have a scene in an office and the boss comes in and he's like being hard on one of the people in the office, and then he leaves and somebody else then comes in and just does things. That's actually two scenes in one location. But my point is that the boss being mean to the person who works for them is the scene. So the boss comes in, he asks a question, he gets an answer he doesn't like, and then he criticizes the person and threatens them and whatever and walks out. In that scene, the way that the person reacts, how it resolves. Does it resolve with the person saying, I will be better? Or does it resolve with the person saying, oh, screw you? Or does it resolve with the person saying, yes, sir, but then as soon as the boss is gone, they say, screw you? Each of those is a very different scene, because the point of the scene is that the boss has come in, taken an action. They have demanded something or criticized or something like that. Now, it could be that the point of the scene is that because it is going to then create a reaction. Or it could be that the point of the scene was that we're finding that triggers the boss to do something in the next scene. And so therefore the point of that scene was the boss getting fed up. Like they come in and they've got a lot on their mind, and then this person lets them down and they're fed up and they go out and then they say, we're closing the company. The point about that is you have to know what that scene is about. Was it about the boss being triggered to quit, to close the company, or was it about the person getting attacked and having a shell around them, but within that they are resentful? And what are they gonna then like not do the job or sabotage it or whatever? The point is you have to decide who the scene's about and what's happening. And very often there are several things happening, but one is the most important. So therefore, the resentment of the worker or the frustration of the boss may be the secondary story in that scene. But the main thing about that is that how do you know if the moment to get out of it is when that thing has happened? Has the employee chosen to sabotage? Has the employee decided to do a better job? Whatever it is that happened in that scene to change them or to make them take an action, that's the end of the scene. So I guess what I'm saying is the way that you know the to get out of a scene is because the action has completed to the point that it is now leading to another scene or raising a question that we're going to have as tension until we get back to that story or whatever it is. The point is the moment of that scene, the action of that scene is done, has been completed, has been taken to the point that there's no more involvement of the characters. They are no longer doing things to or for each other. And that's when you know that the scene is over. You don't have to wait for the boss to walk out, but if the point about the scene is that the employee is going to sabotage, you do need to wait for the boss to get out, and then you have to see what the employee is starting to do, and then you cut out. So the basic answer is don't wait until everything is done, but do make clear what is happening. That's the key to pacing a scene. And so therefore you always try and come in as late as possible. In other words, the moment that the boss comes in, or whatever it is that you can do to get people involved so that they're not waiting for the scene to start, and you get out as soon as whatever the thing is that is important for the audience to say, that's a change. That was a thing that was done. That is the Greek origin of the word drama is a thing done, to do a thing. That's the point of drama. That's why I call it dramatic action, because it doesn't have to be dramatic. It can be comic, it can be underplayed, but it's doing a thing. And that is the key. Okay. As Thomas Lewis puts it, identify the moment of resolution, then get off the stage. That is true, but I would say that the thing that, for me, I don't love that, because identify the moment of resolution is a very intellectual statement of it. I'm saying have them do something. do. Keep it short, keep it real, keep it the thing that you're doing. Not a thing that you're judging, a thing that you're doing. So the moment of resolution is a change. It's an action. It's someone reacting. It's someone doing something. That is what you want to do. You want to get people to do things. Can you start writing without an outline? This is Stay Foolish's question. Not only can you, I will try and find, just a couple weeks ago, I did a whole live stream on this topic, which is, yes, absolutely you can. You need to do it in a different method than I like to do it, because to me, I need it. I need the outline in order to know what's happening. But a lot of people sort of figure out what's happening as they go, and then they go back and rewrite it. I would say the only thing is it's very unusual to write without an outline and then not rewrite, because usually what happens is you're figuring it out as you go along without an outline. And so therefore, sometimes you'll make a choice that needs to be set up earlier, and or something that you discover about a character means that you're going to have to rethink some of the earlier ways that things happen, stuff like that. But I think that you certainly can write without an outline. I don't advise it, only because for me personally, I get lost. I don't feel like I have enough of a reason to go one way or another. It would be an interesting experiment to do now that I'm more confident, but especially in the first 25 years of my career, or of my trying to break in, it simply was too scary for me. I couldn't do it. The thing that an outline gives you is it gives you something of like, oh, at least I know what I'm trying to do. At least I know what the story is. Now, to me, that's creative writing. To me, writing the outline, writing the story, is one of those things that I like to do, because I'm making choices that help me understand who these people are. If they do one thing or another, that redefines them. And if I'm just writing without an outline, sometimes you have a cool experience of discovering things in an original way. So I'm not saying don't do it. For me, that tends to happen while doing the outline. It's not like the outline was easy. It's not like the outline wasn't full of false starts and stuff. But for me, like if I write a scene, I sort of fall in love with the words. And therefore, if that scene is now going in a direction that actually is not helpful to the thing I'm doing, I don't want to give it up. So for me, it's just too painful to write without an outline. For me, the creativity of the outlining doesn't need the creativity of the words. They're sort of two different kinds of creativity, and I personally can't do them both at the same time. So that's my take. Thomas Lewis believes that the screenwriting you can't usually work without an outline. That is another element. In screenwriting, first of all, there are, and this depends. If you're doing a little indie film, a little art film, no budget film, then these rules don't apply. You can do whatever you want. But if you're trying to be in the professional, high money industry, they tend to first of all, they ask for an outline if you're working with them. And second of all, and that includes like if you're doing a rewrite, they'll very often say, give us an outline of what you're going to do. But the other thing is that what Thomas is getting at is that there are more rigid expectations to the standard commercial movie that writing without an outline usually takes you off of that path. On the other hand, you could have simply absorbed and internalized the Hollywood rules so deeply that you can work it out without an outline. That absolutely can happen. I really don't want to be absolute and say you do or don't need an outline. There's pluses and minuses to either one, and it really depends on what kind of brain you have. For me, and I've talked about this before, like if I were to write like some people say, just write a first sentence and then write a second sentence, and that's how you discover what you want to write. The second I write that first sentence, my mind starts outlining. I can't stop. I'm like, oh, who is this person? What is their story? What kind of genre is it? It's just like my brain just does it without me wanting it to. So therefore, I can't not outline. The words actually don't come to me until I have made those choices. Outline is making choices. It's putting things into scenes and saying this is going before that, and this is causing that, and this is raising that question. In order to write a scene, I kind of need to know what is the question of this scene? What is the problem of the scene? Who is the person going into that scene? That's me. Not everyone is like that. Lake Filter, responding to Burgundy, says, to be honest, felt like a well-earned break since I kept thinking what these other characters were doing while the fight was happening. Yes, commercial break moment. And the answer to that is yes. One of the principal methods, especially developed in the 19th century in novels, Dickens was a big exponent of this, but also in theater sometimes, intercutting. In other words, taking one story and then breaking it up and going to other parts of the story or other storylines creates a form of suspense, because when you cut away from the A story to the B story, you leave people questioning what is going to be resolved in that scene that we just saw, and then you go away to the other. And that actually does, it's refreshing and exciting, and it keeps you on your toes as long as you can keep track of the different tracks. So yeah, that works. I would just say it's not always easy to pull that off in the finale, because in the finale, you kind of want things coming together. And usually that's the intercutting is something that happens building to the coming together. But it is certainly possible. There's been lots of good stories where the finale, the final crisis, is broken up among several characters and you're intercutting them. So that's all possible. Like I said, the main thing I'm worried about in this scenario is that Lake Filter specifically said, I think the scene was too long. So that's why I was saying the answer is not adding. Okay. What would you say is the biggest difference between pure screenwriter and a writer-director like Tarantino? Interesting question. And my answer would be the biggest difference is control, is power, and talents of various types, because you can be a great screenwriter and a lousy director. You can also be a lousy screenwriter and a great director. Those two talents are separate. One is about dialogue writing and structure and storytelling, and one is about the mechanics, the incredibly complex many art forms that have to come together to make the film, the shots, the camera, the sound, the acting, the design. All of those things need to be coordinated and guided, and that's a director's work, to be able to both inspire and steer a lot of other talents through the mechanics which are required to make a film story. That's directing. Now, you can do that and not have any idea how to tell a story. And that's why some directors, they just do better with a good script. Some directors have a really good sense of story, but they're not particularly great writers. And like George Lucas, I would say mostly not the greatest writer. Like, he doesn't write great dialogue. American Graffiti was terrific, but his later films, his dialogue isn't great, but his storytelling is pretty terrific. And you get a lot of directors who have a good sense of story, but they're not going to write the words. Like Hitchcock would hire various very, very talented writers, but he was constantly steering and constructing the story. So the answer, I would say, is the difference. And the main thing is the screenwriter does not have control. In other words, a great screenwriter might write a great script, but as the project goes on, other people will decide that scene is in, that scene is out. We're changing this order of scenes. We're going to change that character. And there's nothing the screenwriter can do. Very often the screenwriter gets fired and a new screenwriter is put in to do those things. So the answer is, the biggest difference is, and I hate to say this because I always wanted to be a filmmaker more than a screenwriter, but the truth is, films are made primarily by the filmmaker. Now and then, it'll be the producer. Less and less as the decades have gone by. In the 1930s and 40s, the producers really were in control and the directors were hired hands. But now, the question is, filmmaking is such a complicated art form that you need someone supervising the whole thing artistically and mechanically. That's not a writer. A writer very often does not have any of those skills. First of all, they may not have a visual skill, or they may not have a skill with working with other people. Very often a screenwriter is great with the words, but not great with handling. I mean, there's like a couple hundred people on a film set and the director has to talk to all of them. so it's a different set of skills. That would be, I'd say, the biggest director between a screenwriter, the biggest difference between a screenwriter and a director is that a screenwriter is making a script, but a script is not a film. A filmmaker is making a film. Hopefully they get a good script or they understand how to make a good script. But they, honestly, there's a lot of films that are made where the filmmaking is fine and the script really isn't that good. Separate, and in terms of power and in terms of responsibility and in terms of authorship, yes, almost always it is the director who is the author, the main creative force on a film. Television usually will have a writer who is the guiding force, who delegates the directing but is in control of it. And this is a business decision. But the idea of a series is that there's going to be ongoing storytelling. Unless the director, you get somebody like Soderbergh doing The Knick, which is a really great series, by the way, but he did the whole series. He and the two writers worked together, did the whole thing. In that case, he's totally running the show. But most times the directors are for hire. The original director will establish the style, the visual style, the filmmaking method. And then other directors will be hired on to continue working in that style. And they are hired and replaced and hired and replaced. And that, it depends. Sealy Jack, Burgundy is answering Sealy Jack on the question of how do you know when a scene is done? When you can't do anything else but step back and think to yourself, what now? That's when the scene is done. Fair. Doreen says, I've been told publishers hate colons and semicolons and love M dashes. What is this madness about? That sounds like one of those things that somebody decided. Somebody felt was true. Like if you've been told that, that's not a universal truth. That's somebody's opinion, and probably someone's experience. I would say any form of punctuation, nobody loves it to be overdone. That's the main thing. Colons, semicolons, dashes, doesn't matter. Ellipses, whatever it is, nobody wants to see a lot of it, because if there's a lot of it, it becomes numbing. It becomes just basically a tick, a stylistic thing that doesn't matter. So my answer would be that the person was trying to express that with the case of colons and semicolons, when you have colons and semicolons, you usually have complicated sentences. In fact, you sort of have two sentences jammed together when you have a colon or a semicolon. So that's a lot of words. It's a lot of thought. And I think more and more lately, people want simpler sentences, simpler expressions of ideas. Dashes tend to suggest that something is interrupting or breaking off, and therefore that something must be happening. So they may like dashes because just new stuff is happening all the time. It's a sort of breathlessness to dashes. So that would be in an attempt to translate that madness, the madness that publishers like one form of punctuation and not the other. The reason is because dashes tend to make for shorter and more active sentences, whereas semicolons and colons tend to put together complex thoughts. On the other hand, a good publisher would often like putting together complex thoughts. We're getting towards the end of the hour, so I'm going to say no more questions for the moment. I apologize. I will try and run longer on some days, but I got some stuff to do today. Yes, so Burgundy and Lake Filter are discussing. Lake Filter's basic idea was that Lake Filter had a fight scene at the end of their final chapter. They felt it was going a little long, so they said, let's break it up with some other scenes. So Burgundy's saying, yeah, but when you talk about commercial breaks, which by the way is not a great analogy for intercutting, because commercials aren't actually intercutting, they're actually pausing. And what writers tend to do for commercials is create a cliffhanger. In other words, before the commercial, there will be something that will happen that will raise an intense question, a bit of new surprising action, or something being revealed, something that will make you stay because you want to know what happens to the next while you wait out the commercials. Whereas intercutting, you do a little bit of that, but you're also just going from one interesting thing to another. So therefore, you're not asking them to wait anything out. You're simply saying, two things are happening. It's even more exciting. So, that's quite different. Burgundy does love giving her 2 cents, and I much appreciate their good sense. Good sense. Midnight Cowboy had many flashbacks. My screenplay has 4. Too many? The answer is there is no rule to that. Midnight Cowboy actually didn't have that many. Midnight Cowboy had a fair amount of flash forwards and flash into mental states. There were a couple of flashbacks. The thing about Midnight Cowboy flashbacks is they were incredibly fast. Most of them were 10, 15 seconds or even less. So that they were literally flashes, and they were woven into a flashing style. So the answer is you don't need to worry about the exact number of flashbacks. Some stories are half flashbacks. If they are working to tell the story, if the flashbacks are part of the ongoing story, then there's no rule. You could have as many as you want. I would advise you to watch my video on flashbacks, which gets into this in detail. Okay. A little bit of Hollywood gossip. Apparently, David Zucker's name was not on the credits in the opening weekend, but somehow is on it now. This is about The Naked Gun. And the answer would be currently, most movies that you are going to watch in the theater are digitally projected, which means that there is no film. There's a digital file, which has been usually sent by internet. So, there's not. So therefore, if they decide to change the credits of a film, all they do is ship out a new digital version with that tweak made, which is not that hard to do. And you just start projecting the new version. It's not actually that hard to do. Robert Freeman, I don't understand is that Nolan reissued The Dark Knight, a 2008 movie, gets a full house, and Tenet, a 2020 movie, is an almost empty theater the same weekend. Doesn't make much sense. Well, the answer is that Tenet was, of all Nolan's movies, the most difficult, the most unpopular, ludicrously unpopular. Tenet is really hard to follow. Tenet barely, I have heard a convincing argument that Tenet actually doesn't make any sense. It's a lot of fun, but you have to be having fun with the fact that it's almost incomprehensible. Whereas The Dark Knight is quite clear. It's overwrought. Furthermore, it's Batman. Tenet is not a well-known franchise. So Dark Knight is just going to have people who want to see it. I would bet that most people who are going to see The Dark Knight have either saw it before or saw it before on home video and are saying, oh, it would be fun to see that big. So that is my guess. Whereas most people don't want to see Tenet because it's really, really hard to follow. So that's a one. Okay. As I said, no more questions. I can't answer them. I have 22 ideas in my idea box documents. How do I choose which one should I work on? I found them all fascinating. I did a live stream about this, so I'm going to say wait about 10 minutes after we're done here, 10, 15 minutes. I will put a link to the live stream that I did on the topic of how do you choose what to do. But I would also ask you to look at this one, Instinct. That's a video that talks a lot about it because the answer is a lot of the way you're going to choose is which one you feel like choosing. There isn't it will depend on your goal for doing a script. If your goal is a certain career move, then you're going to choose based on that. If your goal is I want to do something I feel passionate about, you're going to choose based on that, even if the passion project is not necessarily commercially wise. Okie dokie. I Hate Jackie Chan says, what do you think about non-linear storytelling? More and more movies try it. I don't understand it. What is the benefit? Doesn't it make the audience confused? No. Well, it depends on the audience. The answer is non-linear or complex linear storytelling has been so busy working for the past 20 years that a large percentage of the audience is very accustomed to it. This is akin to in the 1980s when MTV opened up the possibility of very, very fast editing. And for a while, everyone was like, I can't follow that. Who can watch that? It's crazy. The editing. Now, honestly, editing moves that fast almost always. Depends on the movie maker. But the truth is, there are phases of film language, of storytelling on screen, and they tend to develop more and more sophistication in certain areas. And you tend to go towards more. As storytelling goes on, people are like, oh, I can do more with this. You tend not to have it going towards simpler, which, by the way, can then be a really good argument for saying, I'm going to go simple because everyone else is going towards elaborate. Oh, I'm sorry. But the answer is, does it make the audience confused? An audience which is not used to it, yes. And depending on the style, where the clues are. And the thing is, in non-linear filmmaking, there will be certain clues. For instance, to have a really obvious one, in Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind by Charlie Kaufman. There's three main time elements, and they move back and forth in time. And one of the main ways you can tell is what color Kate Winslet's hair is. So often what they'll do is they'll put some kind of cue for you to understand where you are. However, a lot of people aren't looking for those cues, so therefore they're lost. And the answer is the majority of the audience currently seems to be able to track that kind of storytelling. If they couldn't, it would not be as popular as it is. So my answer is, if you don't like it, don't do it. But I do think that I think that it's probably going to there will get a point where it's overloaded, like the fast cutting. Now, fast cutting is an option, but it's not required. And hopefully that will be true of nonlinear storytelling, is that it's an area of filmmaking you can use, but you don't have to use it. I think that honestly, a lot of people who grew up or have been tracking the development of faster cutting and nonlinear storytelling, they feel that linear stories are kind of slow and boring. In that case, I have 10 pages in the same location. Okay. In that case, okay, I'm trying to go back to what Sealy Jack is talking about. In that case, I have 10 pages in the same location. Oh, that case about the you have different slug lines for if you're in a location, but you're changing from section to section. For instance, you're at a birthday party and everybody's in the same, restaurant, but you're tracking different characters or they're going from one to another. And the answer is yes, I would put a slug line between what are essentially scenes within the sequence of the 10-page party. If you have, if you're going from one person to another because things are happening simultaneously or sequentially among different people, then you can say like birthday party, Jack and Diane, birthday party, whoever, Rosalind. And so and then you go like at the same time or later. But yes, I would put slug lines or scene breaks between sections of action within a larger sequence, which is all in one place, but in which the action is actually separated. It very much helps the reader and the production. Burgundy and Lake Filter are talking about fights and commercial breaks, and the crew often fights separately. Just talking about One Piece, which is a manga anime, and the answer to that is yeah. But also the other thing about that Burgundy and Lake Filter is, remember, manga and anime very often are like they're just based in fights. In other words, there's a lot of fights in manga and anime. Very often, fighting is the main form of dramatic behavior. So therefore, it may be that breaking up fights is simply an acceptable and familiar language. So that you want to be careful about doing that if your story doesn't work that way. But yes, yeah, that One Piece is a fine example. Thomas Lewis is explaining his earlier sentence about resolution. Resolution is what comes directly after the action ends. It should be short, sweet, to the point, but the action is the most important part, as Glenn says. Most scenes need a moment of resolution. I don't know. I think it depends on your style. A lot of times you want to actually cut out of a scene before the resolution so as to leave a sort of teeny cliffhanger. But you might consider that the resolution in the sense that whatever is right at that cliffhanger is the resolution. This is a case of semantics. In other words, we're talking about the same things and sometimes using different words. My point about whether the question was, when you end a scene, do you want to end it by having it be resolved? In other words, it's finished, the action is done, and you are aware it's done. And what I have discovered is very often you want to end when the action ends, but you don't want to actually get to the point where everything is resolved. Do you want to leave some loose threads because they guide you into the next scenes? Okay, so like I said, no more questions. It's an hour. I got to stop. How do you approach love or sex scenes? Do you show them? How to avoid turning the thing 18 plus, but show that it had sex? This is certainly easy to answer. How do you approach it? It depends on whether or not you're trying to show the moments of lovemaking or not. If you want to, because you feel that that's an important part of the story, then show it. Otherwise, I would say you can look at the entire history of motion pictures, starting when the Hays Code came in, let's say 1932, 1934, everything up until 1967. Every TV show and movie made in those times had to not show the sex. So you can see millions, literally millions of scenes in which people are having sex and the film has to figure out a way to show it or not show it. To give an obvious example, in North by Northwest, the couple is on a train. They are finally culminating their flirtation with a session of lovemaking. They are on the train. They cut to the train going into a tunnel. Hitchcock had a sense of humor. Anyway, so the answer is yes. You can fade out. You can go to the panned away. You can just cut. You can. There's so many ways. Patrick says, I just finished my screenplay after 100 pages. Yes. Congratulations, Patrick. Bravo. That is great. Well done. Feel good. Fung says, I wrote my new screenplay without an outline, and then I realized all the flashbacks are irrelevant and slashed 10 scenes painfully. I will never write without an outline, at least a brief outline. Yeah, for me, that's the big problem. The big problem for me about writing without an outline is that I will write something inspired by something creatively in the moment, and then I'll have to cut it out because it doesn't fit the eventual structure. That's just me, and apparently Fun. Okay. Wong Kar-wai, Glenn's fan club says, Wong Kar-wai, while writing Chungking Express, he wrote way too long and ended up a script is split into 2 movies, which later becomes Fallen Angels. Cool. Yeah, that is another way to handle it. Sometimes you write without an outline and then you have to restructure it and even make it into separate films. Absolutely. That is a good way to handle writing long. A Link says, don't forget to hit the thumbs up button. Okay. Black Don't Crack. Hey, so my script is a finalist and quarterfinalist in a couple of competitions, and now I have a director asking to read the script. Should I get management first? Do I even need it? I'm anxious and confused. The answer is, if somebody wants to read it, get it to them. You can always, first of all, the point about management is certainly use that director's interest to then reach out to management while you are dealing with them, and maybe don't sign anything until, if they are interested, but don't make people wait for you to get your ducks in a row. If they are interested in your scripts, give it to them. Make sure you are backing it up with a really good paper trail. Make sure that you have emails where they acknowledge that they've gotten it. Make sure that you have registered it with the Writers Guild or copyrighted it in some way. Make sure that there are cover letters so that you can say, look, on September 12th, I sent this script and it was, whatever. But other than that, absolutely. If somebody wants to read your stuff, get it to them ASAP. If they are interested, that is a reason for you to then reach out to management and says, hey, I've got this director interested in my script and I won these contests. Can I talk to you about managing me? Because they're more likely to want that in the heat of the moment. That's my personal belief is if you ask people to wait, very often they move on. They've got other things on their mind. They don't like to wait. So I would not overall say that you should ask anyone in Hollywood to wait if you can help it. Your Black Don't Crack says, I never thought things would move this fast. They do. When they happen fast. Everything I ever read and heard said things usually take so long you end up giving up. As an outsider, I feel overwhelmed just to write stories. Okay, yes. Oh, here's the good news. They may want to read it fast. They probably won't act upon that fast. So do respond fast, but then don't count on any. If they do like it, it is very possible that the process of signing whatever paperwork needs to work together could take a year. So yeah, things happen very fast until they don't, and they happen very slow until they don't. People are crazy in Hollywood. That's all I can say. A24 made a bunch of screenwriters become screenwriters and directors recently. I would be interested to hear more details on that. My guess is that they don't make you do it, but that they wanted to do it, and they allowed them to do it. It's hard to force someone to direct a movie. It's not impossible, but it's not that easy. Probably what you've got here is they gave them the opportunity to direct. That's just my guess. A-Link is congratulating Patrick. Yes, congratulations, Patrick. Okay. Sanchez says, right, on the new film on Swift Horses, breathtaking cinematography, but actually has zero story and is really dull. Yeah, no, this is relating to the idea that you can be a phenomenal filmmaker and still not make a movie that is missing a vital component of storytelling. On the other hand, some people would say the filmmaking visuals is all you need. As a writer, I don't tend to believe that, and I think most people do want story in their stories. It is now. It has always been, but especially now that the directorial power, since the 1970s, directors are the authors of films, almost always, and very often a director will just not be that great at storytelling, and as a result, we do get a lot of projects where they look great. The technique is phenomenal, but the content is weak. That also happens with very, very big movies, simply because the content has been so made bland and had too many cooks advising on the story, so that because they're counting on the massiveness of the stars and the special effects, and they have diminished the story, or they have been afraid to take storytelling risks, so it's kind of an obvious story. Those all happen. Thank you for this community. It was very helpful. I am so glad. That is so cool. And congratulations. You should feel great that people are interested, and keep doing it. There will be ups and downs. There will be highs and lows of unanticipated power. So just hang in there and keep telling those stories. Keep your focus on the things you love. Do protect yourself by making sure that everything is done on paper, in the sense of like emails or cover letters, or make sure that any transaction or communication you keep a copy of. Because should things go badly, should people betray you or let you down in some way, it's really useful to have. It's not always legally powerful, but it's a good thing to keep everything in writing. When you come to communicating with people, somebody calls you up and says, "Send me the script." In the cover letter, say, "So glad we talked on the phone and you said send the script. Please acknowledge that you got it." Something like that. Okay. Caplander says, "Hey, watch 6 Essential Questions for Script, and it helped me to start. Yay! I didn't know what to do or where to start, but you helped me a lot. Thank you. I won't forget to mention you when the movie goes viral." Great, Caplander. Congratulations. And I'm so happy that it helps. That's the only reason we are here. So that's great. Keep writing. Keep going. And I would love a little thanks when you become the next Christopher Nolan. Alexis, hi. So how easy was it for you to make peace with not having broken through as a filmmaker, given that that was what you wanted and just being boxed in as just a screenwriter? That's a great question. With a long answer, so I'm going to do a fairly short version. But the answer is, as long as I got to do something once, I felt pretty cool about it. And the truth is, I got to make several films. I made a bunch of literally on, at the time it was digital videos, mini DV, and I made a couple of fairly ultra low budget homemade home movies on mini DV, just to be a filmmaker. And that was really cool, even though they were unwatchable in many ways. And then I made an indie film that got sort of tangled up and never got finished. It got finished enough to go to a couple of festivals. So that felt amazing because I did get to show it at a couple of festivals. And while it was not a great film, but it had great elements to it. And of the 60, 80 people who got to see it at those 4 or 5 screenings, a fair number of them liked it. So that's a win. So the answer, and then I did get to make my Disfigured, which I did actually, having learned from those earlier experiences, I made it in such a way that it could, go to film festivals and got picked up by a small distributor and distributed. So that was a huge accomplishment, and that felt really good. So the thing is, all of these are under the radar of the industry, but they were artistically satisfying because I did the thing I wanted to do, and I got to show it to an audience, and I got a fairly good response. With Disfigured, an overwhelmingly good response. It was just small. In other words, if on streaming and YouTube and stuff, probably a few tens of thousands of people have seen it, and the comments have been almost all really great. The industry doesn't care because there was no money involved. But that felt great. And then the last film I did get to direct, I got to direct professionally. It would cost almost $1 million. I had a professional crew. I had a professional company running it. It was a frustrating and difficult experience. And also I had overcomplicated it. And it was not moving as fast as it could, and I didn't really understand some things. I learned a lot about directing from Like, Share, Follow, my last movie. And I wish I could have used what I learned at the time, but it actually took me about 5 years for it to sink in, for me to, like I said, you don't see your own flaws at first. So at least I don't. I am slow to learn. So that's the tricky part of that, is that the good thing is I got to make 4 or 5 satisfying films artistically. None of them broke me through to the business of directing, but that's because I learned too slow and took too long. And honestly, after Like, Share, Follow, I had the opportunity to direct a couple other movies, and I blew it. I didn't know I was blowing it at the time, but I was offered a couple of very bad scripts. And they said, we love this script. We have the money. We'll make this movie. We're looking for a director. And I said, God, your script sucks. Let me rewrite it, and then we can make it together. And they honestly did not want to hear that their script sucked. In one case, the movie was made with another director, and it did suck. The others, they never even got made. But the answer was, there were 3 or 4 of these meetings I had where there was a movie to make. And I didn't understand the job of director. I thought of it as auteur. I thought of it as, if I had just said, oh, my job is to direct this piece of crap as well as possible and maybe tweak the script a little, I probably could have broken through in that sense and kept working. I screwed it up because I was self-involved, self-important, and did not understand my job. So the answer is, I made peace with the fact that at least artistically, a good percentage of the things I thought I could do, I did in a way that when I look at it, I go, I'm proud of it. And when other people see it, even if it's only a few, it works. That's pretty cool. So that's how I made peace with it. Okay, thank you, Lake Filter. That's great. Thank you, everyone saying thank you. I'm going to say thank you. We're going to say congratulations to Patrick from Adam Lum. What do you think the future of screenwriting would be like? That's a big one. I would say partly I ask you to take a look at this video, Career Advice Amid Chaos. As I said, I will put a link to this down in the description about 15 minutes from now. But I get into what I believe the future is and how you should handle it. So I'm going to ask you to watch that because I don't have the time now. But my basic answer is we are in a time of chaos. The future of screenwriting will be that there will be, it will be more gig working. There will be less ongoing, stable jobs, at least in the short run. There's more consolidation of the companies. And so therefore, the answer is, the landscape has become broken up, and there isn't a clear single path. So therefore, I would say my answer in that video is be you. Do what you love to do. Do what you do best, and see if you can find people, because there's all sorts of things going on. Find the places that like what you do. Don't try and be what you think they like. Sesky Daddy has asked, how to know if my creativity is worth expressing to the masses, or how to know that what I do is something that appeals to the audience. That is a fabulous question. Burgundy says, your audience will find you, not the other way around. Thank you, Burgundy. A couple of quick points about this. I would say, actually in my new book, I have a little chapter on is this worth writing? It's not, I didn't do a video about it, but my answer is basically, your creativity is worth expressing. That's the question, is how do I know if my creativity is worth expressing? Your creativity is worth expressing. Whether or not it will make money or appeal to the masses is kind of not the point. As Burgundy is saying, you will find out how mass appeal you are by showing it to people. If the mass appeal companies, the business of mass appealing, likes it, they'll like it and they'll pick it up. But if they don't like it, that doesn't mean it's not worth doing. It is worth doing. You just do it for a smaller audience. As I just said about the films that I made, often took years to get made. And the end, I had to sometimes make them at a literally, whatever I had in my pocket, and they were so low tech that they couldn't be shown commercially, but they were still worth making. And there were some things about them that people liked. So the answer is, you don't know what you're doing will appeal to the audience. But the main thing is, if all you care about is appealing to the audience, you're not giving the audience what appeals to them. They want you to give what you have to offer. They want your vision. They want your ideas. When they go to the movies, they don't want somebody to say, give me what I already like. That's the algorithm at its worst. What people are looking for is for you to take whatever it is that interests you and do it as your way as well as possible. So therefore, the trick is to think, what is it that you really want to do? What do you want to do so much that even if everyone hates it, you'll kind of be glad you did it and you'll kind of like it. That's how you decide. Because then, no matter what happens, you'll do fine. Because first of all, you'll please the first and most important audience, you. And second of all, you'll be surprised, as Burgundy said, some people will probably like it. The other thing to remember is when you're starting out, because it sounds like you're starting out, is it's going to take a while. You don't get it the first time. Nobody gets it the first time. When somebody says, Orson Welles' first movie was Citizen Kane, that's because he had a 20-year career before that in movies, in radio and theater. He knew what he was doing in a lot of other ways. So my answer is, A, do what you want. Do what you want most, what you love. Do it the way you think it's right. See what you can learn about the standards of the business if you care about that. But the main thing is just look at the things you love and try and do the thing you love that's your version of the things you love, and then see how it happens, and then do it again. You do it again and again. That's how anyone becomes a mass appeal artist. Nobody gets mass appeal their first time out. Very rarely. So that's it. Okay, we've gone long. Nishaj, thank you very much. I really, I hope to be able to say I've done at least some of the things you have in the film industry one day. Well, that's cool. Thank you. That's what I say. I say the fact that I was not bigger. Oh, well, I was something. I was what I was. And that is what I hope you will take with it, is that's all you get. And that everyone in the business, it's really wild to see somebody who gets to make a $30 million movie and they're frustrated because it's not an $80 million movie or because it doesn't do as well as it never ends. That doesn't help you. Do what you like as well as you can and keep doing that and keep being open and learning. That is my answer. Okay, so with that, I am going to say, go write something.